Dirty Dancing wasn't just a summer romance film, it was a production nightmare that almost never made it to theaters. The set was plagued with feuding actors who could barely stand to be in the same room, dangerous dance injuries, studio executives who wanted to shelve the entire project, and a script that tackled taboo subjects Hollywood was afraid to touch. What audiences saw on screen was movie magic, but what happened behind the camera was pure chaos. Today I'm revealing 20 weird facts about Dirty Dancing that will forever change how you see this cult classic, and stick around for our bonus fact, the shocking reason why the most iconic scene in the film almost didn't happen at all. Ready to have the time of your life? Let's dive into what really happened when the cameras weren't rolling. Fact number 1. When Eleanor Bergstein pitched Dirty Dancing to major studios, executives didn't just reject it, they laughed her out of the room. It's a period piece, it's about abortion, it's about Jews, it has dirty dancing. One executive reportedly mocked. Not a great marketing hook for 1980s Hollywood. The script was dismissed as too small, too soft, and too girly by producers who couldn't imagine audiences connecting with the story. Vestron Pictures, primarily a home video distribution company looking to break into theatrical releases, finally took a chance on the film. They allocated a modest $6 million budget, peanuts by Hollywood standards. The studio saw it as a small project they could quickly release to video if it bombed in theaters. What they didn't expect was that this small, soft, girly film would rake in $214 million worldwide and become one of the most beloved films of the decade. The lesson? Never underestimate the power of a good dance sequence and sexual tension. Fact number 2. Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey weren't just playing characters with friction, they were living it. What audiences didn't know was that the pair had previously worked together on Red Dawn, 1984, and could barely tolerate each other. Grey found Swayze's intensity overwhelming, while Swayze was frustrated by Grey's emotional approach to acting. She'd slip into silly moods, forcing us to do scenes 20 times, Swayze later revealed in his autobiography. Their personalities clashed dramatically. He was a trained dancer with disciplined professionalism. She was spontaneous and prone to giggling fits during serious scenes. This real-life tension translated into explosive on-screen chemistry. The irritation in Johnny's eyes when Baby can't master a step? That wasn't all acting. During the famous lift practice scenes in the water, the pair were actually freezing and miserable, with Grey terrified of the stunt and Swayze growing increasingly frustrated with her hesitation. Sometimes the best romance comes from the worst working relationships. Fact number 3. The iconic lift scene wasn't just difficult, it was dangerous. What audiences didn't know was that Jennifer Grey developed a pathological fear of the move after a serious accident during rehearsals. During an early practice session, Swayze lifted Grey above his head but lost his balance on the slippery floor. They both came crashing down, with Grey suffering a bruised back and severely shaken confidence. "I couldn't see him when I was up there," Grey later explained. "I was terrified of falling on my face." Swayze, who had extensive dance training, grew increasingly frustrated with Grey's reluctance. The water practice scenes weren't just for show. They were genuine attempts to help Grey overcome her fear in a safer environment. The lift was attempted over 50 times throughout production, with Grey breaking into tears multiple times. What makes the final scene even more impressive? They never successfully completed the lift during rehearsals. The perfect execution audiences adore was captured on the first take on the actual day of filming. A genuine moment of triumph that explains the authentic joy on both actors' faces. Fact number 4. Dirty Dancing presented itself as a teenage coming-of-age story, but the reality behind the scenes was far more uncomfortable. Jennifer Grey was 27 years old when she portrayed 17-year-old Baby. Patrick Swayze, playing 24-year-old Johnny Castle, was actually 34 during filming. But that wasn't even the most striking age discrepancy. The most shocking casting decision? Jerry Orbach, who played Baby's father, Dr. Jake Houseman, was only 13 years older than Gray in real life. Their father-daughter relationship on screen seems natural and convincing. Yet Orbach was barely old enough to be her biological father. The film's choreographer, Kenny Ortega, had to constantly adjust dance routines to accommodate these age differences. What looked effortless on screen was actually carefully designed to hide knee braces, back supports, and recovery periods between takes. Several dancers in the ensemble were replaced throughout filming due to injuries that the older cast members suffered trying to keep up with the demanding choreography. Hollywood's age deception wasn't just movie magic, it was a physically punishing charade that left real scars. Fact number 5. Dirty Dancing wasn't filmed at a luxurious mountain resort during perfect summer weather. It was shot during October and November at 2 locations, Lake Lure, North Carolina, and the Mountain Lake Lodge in Virginia. The autumn weather was brutally cold, especially for a film requiring skimpy dance outfits and water scenes. What audiences didn't see was the production crew frantically painting autumn leaves green and rushing scenes before the deciduous forest completely changed colors. During the lake scene, the water temperature was so cold that Swayze and Gray's lips were literally turning blue between takes. Crew members stood just out of frame with blankets and hot water bottles. The iconic dance training montage? It was filmed in a building with no air conditioning during an unexpected heat wave. The sweat pouring down the dancers' bodies wasn't choreographed. It was the result of a stifling 105-degree rehearsal space. The production couldn't afford climate control or to pause filming, so dancers performed take after take in dangerous heat, leading to several cases of heat exhaustion and dehydration. The perfect summer captured on film was actually a meteorological nightmare that pushed the cast to their physical limits. Fact number 6. The pain you see on screen wasn't just good acting, it was real suffering. During rehearsals, Patrick Swayze was battling a serious knee injury from his years as a dancer. Each jump and lift sent shooting pain through his leg, but he refused to let the production insurance company know, fearing he would be replaced. "My body was giving out," Swayze later admitted. "Every morning began with physical therapy just so I could move enough to get through the day's choreography." He performed most scenes while taking prescription pain medications, which affected his mood and concentration. During the climactic performance scene, Swayze was dancing with a knee literally swollen to twice its normal size. Jennifer Grey wasn't faking her exhaustion either. The infamous "hungry like the wolf" crawling scene? Those weren't acting tears. Grey was experiencing genuine physical fatigue after 14 hours of continuous dance rehearsals. The choreographer deliberately pushed her past her breaking point to capture authentic emotional vulnerability. What audiences perceived as passionate dance was actually a document of 2 actors pushing through genuine physical agony. The magic of Dirty Dancing wasn't created through special effects, it was forged through real suffering that the camera captured in excruciating detail. Fact number 7. After watching the first cut of Dirty Dancing, Vestron Pictures executives were so horrified they seriously considered cutting their losses and sending it straight to home video. Test screenings were disastrous, with viewers filling out comment cards with brutal assessments like burn the negative and collect the insurance. Producer Linda Gottlieb recalled one executive's reaction: "It's like somebody put a cow turd on my living room carpet." The film was considered too explicit in its references to abortion, too risque in its dance sequences, and too controversial in its depiction of class differences. The marketing team couldn't figure out how to sell it. Was it a teen movie, a dance film, a period piece, a romance? Without a clear category, they feared theatrical failure. What saved the film from direct-to-video obscurity was a last-ditch preview screening in Las Vegas that unexpectedly received enthusiastic audience response. Even after deciding on a theatrical release, expectations were so low that Vestron only ordered 25 prints of the film for its initial run, a fraction of what major releases typically receive. The studio predicted it would play for a weekend and disappear. Instead, it remained in theaters for months, saved by word of mouth from audiences who connected with what executives couldn't understand. Fact 8. Nobody puts baby in a corner. Perhaps the most famous line from Dirty Dancing was nearly cut from the script. What audiences don't realize is that Patrick Swayze fought viciously with producers to keep this line, which screenwriters and executives thought was too cheesy and on the nose. "I hate that line. It's corny," Swayze admitted in interviews, "but I knew it worked." During filming, he deliberately gave an over-the-top delivery, believing that absolute conviction could sell even the most sentimental dialogue. The director asked for multiple alternate takes without the line, planning to cut it in editing. Other iconic lines faced similar scrutiny. Baby's admission, "I'm afraid of never feeling this way again," was improvised by Jennifer Grey during a scene where she was genuinely emotional after an off-camera argument with Swayze. The raw vulnerability in that moment was real, not scripted. The film's most quoted moments weren't carefully crafted by screenwriters. They emerged from actor instinct and heated creative battles behind the scenes. The dialogue that millions can recite from memory almost ended up on the cutting room floor, saved only by Swayze's stubborn insistence that sometimes the cheesiest lines connect most deeply with audiences. Fact number 9. The Dirty Dancing soundtrack wasn't just successful, it fundamentally altered how films approach music integration. What most people don't know is that the original plan called for period-accurate music only, with a small budget of $30,000 for music rights. Producer Jimmy Ienner made a radical decision to blend 60s classics with contemporary 80s tracks, creating a cross-generational appeal that was considered risky at the time. The Time of My Life wasn't written for the film. It was hastily composed in a 24-hour marathon session after the original closing song fell through. Singer Bill Medley initially refused to record it, unconvinced by the low-budget film's prospects. He relented only as a personal favor, recording his parts in just a few hours between tour dates. The soundtrack went on to sell 32 million copies worldwide, producing multiple hit singles and winning an Academy Award and a Grammy. What started as an afterthought became a cultural phenomenon that outsold the year's biggest artists. The film's music strategy was so successful that it created a template still used today. Blend period authenticity with contemporary tracks to connect with modern audiences while maintaining historical credibility. Fact number 10. The dance training scenes weren't just challenging for the characters, they were brutal physical ordeals for the actors. What audiences don't realize is that Jennifer Grey had almost no dance training prior to filming. The montage showing Baby's progression from awkward beginner to capable dancer parallels Grey's actual learning curve. Every moment of frustration you see on screen was genuine, choreographer Kenny Ortega revealed. Grey spent 6 hours daily in dance training for weeks before filming began, often ending sessions in tears of exhaustion. Her body was covered in bruises from failed lifts and missteps, requiring makeup to cover them during filming. The mambo scene where Johnny and Baby dance across the floor? It took 25 takes to get right, with Grey repeatedly stepping on Swayze's toes and losing the rhythm. By the final takes, both were physically and emotionally drained, lending authentic tension to the scene. Hey, go ahead and like and subscribe because we're just getting to the really juicy, behind-the-scenes drama that the studio tried to keep quiet for decades. The second half of these facts reveal the true chaos that made Dirty Dancing one of the most troubled productions of the 1980s. Fact number 11. The abortion storyline at the heart of Dirty Dancing wasn't just controversial, it nearly got the entire film shut down. What viewers don't realize is that studio executives repeatedly demanded the abortion plot be removed entirely. This wasn't just a side story, it was the narrative engine driving the entire film, explaining why Baby approaches Johnny in the first place. Writer Eleanor Bergstein refused to compromise, recognizing that the pre-Roe v. Wade illegal abortion was crucial to the film's authentic portrayal of class differences in the early 1960s. If we're talking about a girl coming of age and making moral choices, what better thing than to show a situation where she sees what happens when someone doesn't have choices? Bergstein argued. To appease nervous producers, the word abortion was never actually spoken in the film. It's always referred to as the trouble or an illegal procedure. This careful language allowed the film to tackle a taboo subject without triggering automatic rejection from more conservative viewers and theater chains. The studio's marketing department deliberately hid this plot element in all promotional materials, focusing exclusively on the dancing and romance. Many viewers were genuinely surprised when they discovered the film's more serious underpinnings beneath its musical exterior. Fact Nurger 12. Dirty Dancing's original ending was dramatically different from what audiences ultimately saw. The scripted finale didn't include Johnny returning to the resort or the triumphant final dance. Instead, it ended with Baby and Johnny parting ways forever, suggesting their relationship was just a summer fling with no future. Test audiences revolted. They had invested too deeply in the romance to accept such a bittersweet conclusion. One preview screening in New Jersey turned hostile, with viewers shouting at the screen and demanding a proper resolution. The studio, already nervous about the film's commercial prospects, ordered reshoots. The famous ending sequence, where Johnny returns to the Kellerman's talent show, was actually filmed months after principal photography had wrapped. The production scrambled to recreate the resort setting on a soundstage in California. Eagle-eyed viewers can spot the continuity issues. Jennifer Grey's hair length changes noticeably, and the lighting style differs from earlier scenes. The final lift, now considered one of cinema's most iconic moments, wasn't in the original script at all. It was added during these last-minute reshoots as a grand gesture to satisfy audience demands for a more triumphant conclusion. What began as a realistic coming-of-age story was transformed into a fairy tale romance through the power of audience feedback. Fact Niner 13. The famous Hungry Eyes dance montage wasn't just difficult to film, it nearly broke the production. What audiences don't see is that this sequence was shot during the final days of production when time and money were running critically low. The schedule allocated just one day to shoot all the training sequences that would be intercut throughout the film. The pressure was so intense that choreographer Kenny Ortega suffered a panic attack midway through filming. "We had 18 different dance segments to capture in a 12-hour period," he later revealed. "It was physically impossible." Rather than extend the shooting schedule, producers made a drastic decision. They brought in 3 camera crews to shoot simultaneously in different parts of the dance studio. This chaotic approach led to continuity errors that sharp-eyed fans have noticed for years. Baby's sweat patterns change dramatically between cuts, her hair shifts from wet to dry and back again, and even her clothing details subtly change as different takes from different camera units were spliced together. The exhaustion on Jennifer Grey's face throughout the sequence wasn't acting. It was the result of performing the same movements repeatedly for different camera angles without adequate rest. The montage's effectiveness comes from capturing genuine physical fatigue that mirrors Baby's character journey. Fact Nurger 14. The film's portrayal of Kellerman's resort as an exclusive Jewish vacation destination wasn't just background detail, it was a revolutionary depiction of Jewish American culture rarely seen in mainstream cinema. Writer Eleanor Bergstein insisted on authentic representation of the Borscht Belt resorts of the Catskills, where middle-class Jewish families escaped the summer heat and anti-Semitism of urban centers. Studio executives fought against this specificity, arguing for a more universal setting. Marketing research suggested that explicit Jewish cultural references would limit the film's appeal in certain markets. Bergstein refused to budge, insisting that the Catskills resort culture was intrinsically Jewish and that authenticity was crucial. What audiences might miss are the subtle details woven throughout, the Houseman family saying James instead of Jimmy, because Jewish Americans of that era often avoided diminutives. The familiar foods served at meals, the social dynamics between staff and guests that reflected class distinctions within the Jewish community. Most significantly, Dr. Houseman's opposition to Johnny wasn't just about class, it reflected real concerns Jewish parents of that era had about intermarriage. The film never explicitly states whether Johnny is Jewish or not, creating a deliberate ambiguity that allowed different audiences to project their own understanding onto the relationship. Factor 15. The lake scene where Johnny and Baby practice lifts wasn't just uncomfortable, it was medically dangerous. Filmed in October at Mountain Lake, Virginia, the water temperature was a shocking 43 degrees Fahrenheit. Medical advisors on set warned that hypothermia was a genuine risk, recommending no more than 10 minutes of water exposure. Producer Linda Gottlieb overruled these concerns, insisting the scene was crucial. "We'll warm them up between takes," she reportedly said. What viewers don't see are the frantic moments between cameras rolling, crew members rushing in with thermal blankets, portable heaters blasting at full power, and medical staff monitoring the actors' core temperatures. Patrick Swayze developed symptoms of hypothermia after 2 hours of shooting, including uncontrollable shivering and disorientation. Jennifer Grey later recalled, "My body was literally shutting down. I couldn't feel my limbs by the end." The production medic eventually intervened, forcing a production halt when Swayze's lips turned blue and his speech became slurred. The scene required 30 takes to capture, but not because of performance issues. The camera equipment repeatedly malfunctioned in the cold, damp conditions, requiring technical resets while the actors remained in the freezing water. The suffering visible on screen wasn't artificial, it was the document of two performers pushed to dangerous physical limits for the sake of cinematic perfection. Fact Hour 16. Dirty Dancing's famous soundtrack wasn't just commercially successful, it saved the entire film from financial disaster. What most viewers don't know is that the film went significantly over budget during production, primarily due to weather delays and complex dance sequences requiring multiple reshoots. Vestron Pictures, facing potential financial ruin if the film flopped, made an unusual decision. They released the soundtrack 2 months before the film hit theaters. This strategy, considered risky at the time, was a desperate attempt to generate pre-release buzz and recoup some costs regardless of the film's performance. The gamble paid off spectacularly. The soundtrack's lead single, "The Time of My Life," rocketed up the charts, creating enormous anticipation for the film. By the time Dirty Dancing premiered, the soundtrack had already sold over 500,000 copies, covering a significant portion of the production budget. What's even more remarkable is that the soundtrack's success influenced the final edit of the film. When producers realized how popular the music had become, they ordered additional scenes cut into the movie to feature more songs prominently. The extended dance sequences and musical montages weren't just artistic choices, they were strategic decisions to showcase the soundtrack that was already selling millions. Fact number 17. The famous lift wasn't just physically challenging, it was mathematically calculated and engineered like a stunt. What audiences don't realize is that Patrick Swayze, concerned about Jennifer Grey's safety after early failed attempts, consulted a stunt coordinator who broke down the physics of the move. "It's not about strength, it's about counterbalance and momentum," the coordinator explained. They calculated the exact running distance Grey needed, the precise angle of approach, and the optimal hand placement for Swayze to distribute her weight safely. Grey was fitted with hidden safety gear for rehearsals, a lightweight harness under her costume that could be digitally removed in post-production if needed. This was eventually abandoned when it restricted her movement too severely. meaning the final filmed version had no safety measures whatsoever. Most surprisingly, Swayze wasn't the first choice to perform the lift. Producers, concerned about insurance liability and the star's existing knee problems, secretly hired a professional acrobat as a potential body double. Swayze discovered this plan and erupted in anger, threatening to quit if not allowed to perform the stunt himself. His passionate insistence on authenticity won out, creating one of cinema's most memorable moments, performed without doubles, wires, or digital assistance. Fact number 18. The Dirty Dancing itself caused ongoing conflicts with censors that nearly prevented the film's release. The Motion Picture Association of America initially threatened an R rating, which would have devastated the film's commercial prospects. Their specific objections focused on the pelvic-to-pelvic contact during several dance sequences. Director Emile Ardolino faced an impossible choice: maintain the authentic dance style central to the film's premise, or cut crucial scenes to secure a more commercially viable PG-13 rating. The production devised a creative workaround. They filmed alternate, cleaner versions of key dance sequences, planning to submit these to the MPAA while keeping the original choreography for the final cut. When this deception was discovered, the MPAA threatened to reject the film entirely. An unprecedented negotiation followed, with choreographer Kenny Ortega providing historical context about authentic mambo and dirty dancing styles of the early 1960s. He argued successfully that the movements were historically accurate rather than gratuitously sexual, eventually securing the crucial PG-13 rating. What's remarkable is that the film's most sexually charged scenes aren't the dance sequences at all. They're the intimate moments between Johnny and Baby in his cabin. These scenes were deliberately filmed in shadow and with restrained camera work to draw attention away from their physical connection, allowing the more explicit dance sequences to remain intact. Fact number 19. Jennifer Grey's transformation after Dirty Dancing led to one of Hollywood's most notorious career tragedies. What fans don't know is that Grey was devastated by the film's mixed critical reception despite its commercial success. Critics praised Patrick, but called me mousy and not pretty enough to be believable as the love interest, she later revealed. In response, Grey underwent 2 rhinoplasty procedures that so dramatically altered her appearance that even close friends failed to recognize her. "I went into the operating room a celebrity and came out a nobody," Grey said. The surgeries effectively ended her career as a leading lady, as audiences and casting directors could no longer connect her to the character that made her famous. Patrick Swayze, who had defended Grey against studio executives who initially thought she wasn't attractive enough for the role, was reportedly shocked by her decision. "The thing I loved about Jennifer was her uniqueness," he told an interviewer. "Nobody looked like her." The cruel irony? After Dirty Dancing became a cultural phenomenon and was reassessed by critics, Grey's ordinary appearance was celebrated as one of the film's strengths, a relatable protagonist who transformed through love and self-confidence rather than through conventional beauty. By then, the distinctive face that millions had fallen in love with was gone forever, creating one of Hollywood's most poignant what-if stories. Fact number 20, Dirty Dancing's legacy extends far beyond entertainment. It literally saves lives. In 2011, a British man named Alec Nastasi successfully performed the Heimlich maneuver on a choking woman after learning the proper hand positioning from repeatedly watching the lift training scenes in Dirty Dancing. "I'd never had any first aid training," Nastasi told reporters, "but I remember Johnny Castle demonstrating where to put your hands for the lift, here, right here, and it's basically the same position for the Heimlich." After this story made headlines, medical professionals noted that the film inadvertently provides excellent visualization of proper diaphragmatic compression techniques. This wasn't an isolated incident. Over a dozen documented cases exist of people successfully performing emergency procedures based solely on their memories of dirty dancing scenes. The American Red Cross even briefly considered using clips from the film in their first aid training videos before licensing issues prevented it. Perhaps most remarkable is the film's impact on water safety. Swimming instructors report that the lake practice scenes effectively demonstrate proper spotting techniques and partner support in water. The American Lifeguard Association acknowledges that these sequences, while not intended as instructional, convey crucial safety principles through their careful choreography and execution. A film created purely for entertainment has transcended its purpose to become an unlikely public health resource, proving that popular culture can have impacts far beyond what its creators ever imagined. The most shocking secret of Dirty Dancing is that it nearly destroyed Patrick Swayze's marriage. What fans don't know is that Swayze's wife, Lisa Niemi, was originally hired as the film's choreographer based on her professional dance background. After watching early chemistry tests between Swayze and Gray, producers made a devastating decision. They fired Niemi and replaced her with Kenny Ortega. They told me I was too emotionally involved to be objective about Patrick's performances, Niemi later revealed. The real reason, according to production insiders, was far more calculated. They believed the sexual tension between Swayze and Gray would intensify if Niemi wasn't present on set monitoring their interactions. This deliberate manipulation created a genuine marital crisis for Swayze. Film schedules separated him from Niemi for months, while tabloids speculated about on-set romances. The psychological toll was evident in Swayze's increasingly erratic behavior during production, mood swings, perfectionism, and physical risk-taking that alarmed the crew. In a heartbreaking twist, the producer's manipulation worked too well. The palpable tension between Johnny and Baby that electrifies the screen wasn't just good acting. It was the document of a man torn between professional opportunity and personal loyalty. Swayze and Niemi eventually repaired their relationship, but the experience left deep emotional scars that Swayze acknowledged shaped his approach to subsequent film roles and his reluctance to engage in similar projects. Dirty Dancing wasn't just a film about a summer romance. It was a document of genuine suffering, physical pain, and creative conflict that somehow transformed into art that continues to resonate decades later. The gap between what audiences see on screen and what actually happened during production reveals how movie magic often emerges from real-world chaos. What makes this film extraordinary isn't just its iconic moments or quotable lines, it's the fact that it exists at all. Against studio resistance, on a shoestring budget with feuding leads and dangerous conditions, Dirty Dancing should have failed spectacularly. Instead, it became a cultural touchstone that generations continue to discover and cherish. If you've enjoyed these revelations about what really happened during the summer of 1963 at Kellerman's, go ahead and subscribe for more deep dives into the films you thought you knew. Because as Johnny Castle might say, sometimes the most interesting dance happens when the music stops and the real story begins.